All right, and we're moving on, and the next talk will be about Xamarin Forms shell. I have our next speaker, Shane Neville, with us, with the amazing Xamarin monkey on the background, and he's gonna tell us about all things Xamarin Forms shell. Shane.
Hello. Let's see, let me get my screen sharing here. We good? You can see me? Okay. Cool. All right, let's minimize our little Teams window here. Yeah, so welcome to .NET Conf. Thank you for having me, James and everyone. I've had some really good talks. Really enjoyed the dual screen stuff. That stuff's very exciting. So excited to work on some scenarios there with Shell as well. So that'll be cool. Speaking of, I'm here to talk about Xamarin Forms Shell. I'm a senior engineer here at Microsoft on the Xamarin Forms team. I've been here about 2 years. And yeah, I do a lot of work on Shell. So I figured I would kind of let you in on everything that we've been doing. So the first question, obviously, for anybody who hasn't already been using Shell, what is Shell? So the core idea of Shell was to provide a declarative application structure. So the idea here is that apps always have an intrinsic structure, almost like a sitemap, or on iOS terms, you might call it like a storyboard, something that kind of articulates where you navigate to, what links to what, etc. So we wanted to kind of bring that same experience to Xamarin Forms. So that's what Shell was born out of. The other nice thing that happens once you have this declarative application structure is it lets you simplify navigation. So if you know what is a child of what and where things sort of lay out, you can kind of just let navigation naturally flow. What it also lets you do is it lets you really easily articulate from a coding standpoint where you want to go in the application. So in Shell, we have everything represented by strings, like your routes and things like that. So you can just say, hey, I want to go to this place in the application, and you know what, I want this to be my navigation stack, which is really nice over the kind of the non-Shell way of navigating. Ease of customization is also a big focus on Shell. So the idea of being able to sort of theme your Shell application. So you want to be able to just take Shell, define your theme at the Shell level, and then that sort of permeates through all the different areas. So there's no need to sort of like set it up on each different page, et cetera, et cetera. All of this sort of comes together in a rapid development application experience. Because with everything just kind of tying together and all of the UIs just kind of building themselves off of your declarative app structure, we're able to sort of just project that to a UI paradigm to represent that declarative structure. So, but let's sort of give a little bit more context to what we mean by declarative. So here you'll see a typical Xamarin Forms app, a Xamarin Forms Shell app. Now what we've done here is we've told it what type of elements this app is composed of. So we essentially have a flyout item, a flyout item. So these are things we want to show in our flyout navigation menu. And then we have this here, which is another area of Shell saying, hey, we don't want this to show up in the Shell, in the flyout. This is going to be a separate page that just has like a tab bar. And then here we have some menu items that we want to show up that don't have any content, but we want to provide actions to them. So if we look at what that translates to, that's this. See, here we have our flyout item homepage, account flyout item, and then our tab bar doesn't show up because we haven't declared that this is something that you can reach through a flyout navigation point. But we do have the two menu items here. So let's drill down into the flyout item here a little bit. So if we drill down to the structure, what we're saying here now is flyout item has two children here. Two children that are two children, account basically has two children. Now we're saying, okay, we want these children to be represented as tabs. So as you can see here, we have two tabs, so tab details, tab settings. Now this is all just created, there's no need to really create like tab pages or anything like that. At this point, it's just, you know, we're generating this UI based on how you've declared the layout of your application. And then you'll see here, we've also already articulated that this tab has two children. And those two children we've represented as top tabs, as you can see here. So these two tabs here are children of details. If we were to click on settings, which you'll see later, the top tabs would disappear because settings only has one child. So one thing we also wanted to make sure was that you could really easily theme your entire app. So here you have a very bare bones shell app. So this has no theming, no colors, nothing really added to it. So what we can do now at the shell level, here we go. I'm pretty excited about this transition. I'm kind of building it up a little. Ooh, pretty fancy. All right. So if you look at this here, you'll see what we've done is at the shell level, we've defined a resource. And then what you do is you indicate the different styles that you want to apply to each coloring point. So here we have like a background color, foreground color, our title color we've set to magenta, disabled, unselected. As you can see down here, title color for the selected one, unselected is this. I don't know what that would be named. It's like a white with an alpha value. So yeah, so it's really neat because you can just specify these at the high level to say this is generally what we want our app theme to look like. Kind of like how should everything color? So, but we can kind of drill down a little bit more and get a little bit more creative with how we customize. For example, on the flyouts, you can customize. So as you saw on the flyout was just a list of items. Now what you can do though is that each of those different items, so what generates each of those items is essentially just a Xamarin Forms grid. That's all it is. It's not native, it's not some native element that we're creating that you can't really tap into. It's literally just a grid. On our documentation, you can see it here. I'll show you later in an app. But basically all we've done is take a grid here, and this grid represents all the different elements. So it's kind of like a control template, editing it in this way. So you can start from the default behavior and then modulate it as you need. So you'll see here, I've basically just set the background color to yellow. And then if you looked over here, I've increased the height. So all this is done is now this menu item has rendered as a larger grid. But, so this is a new feature actually that's coming in 4.6. What we wanted to do was make it easier to sort of articulate these differences without having to throw in the whole thing. So what we're adding here are style classes. And the idea with this is that on the flyout item, you can add style classes to style individual properties. So the nice thing about this is that when you're setting the style on properties, you can target any single property of a Xamarin Forms element. So we really wanted to avoid just having the entire label API replicated up to here. So this is really neat because it lets you just touch into it. See, right here, all we've really done with this is we've said, hey, flyout item, I want your text color to be purple, and I want your text decoration to be underlined. And you can see it's still following the same style as everything else. And the neat thing about style classes is that they're composable. So you can do the main page flyout item for the label, then you can add another style for the image, so this guy over here, and then just add another one to that. And then you could even do it for the entire layout, because this is just a grid, so you could set a style for the entire grid. Also, this lets you tap into, say, like the Visual State Manager for these different items, or anything like that. So yeah, it's really neat. So it's neat because you start out at this declarative structure that just gives you this, all right, here's your app that you're good to go with. And then at that point, you can just kind of tap in the little areas you need to just kind of beautify it, or just to make it more the app you want. So this also plays into the tabs. So as you can see here, we have these properties here where you can set, any of these properties are settable at any declarative level, which is neat, which lets you really customize how these things, how these colors show up. So as you can see here at the shell level, basically what I've done is just tab bar background, cornflower blue, unselected color purple, and title green. So yeah, if your boss ever asks you if you can get that tab bar in cornflower blue, you can oblige. But all right, let's get to some of the exciting things here. Shell navigation. So the navigation on Shell is really exciting because you don't really, it just kind of comes with it for free. So the basic idea here is that you name your destination. So back when we were looking at the declarative layout, you essentially just give any of those elements a route name. You don't have to give everything a route name. All that really matters is that you name your destination point of where you want to go. Once you've given it a name, you can go there from anywhere. So this is the nice idea because it makes it easy to just articulate from anywhere. So you can do it from a service, you can do it from a view model. If you don't like statics in your view model, you can wrap it in like an iNavigation service of sorts and do it from there. But you don't really have to then worry as much about pulling in the context of the Xamarin Forms app. Because sometimes that gets tricky with Xamarin Forms because you have these navigation pages and you have to figure out which navigation page is active and which one's inactive and have kind of pass that one is in the active one and find it. Whereas this just says, hey, this is where I want to navigate to. So another thing you can do with Shell is you can register these generic pages. So these are pages that you want to be able to go to from anywhere. So they don't necessarily fit in your exact layout. So for example, you might have a modal page on the flyout that you can click that just pushes a modal page onto the stack, but that doesn't really exist as a child of anything. It's just a page you want to be able to get to. So once you kind of register that type, you can then deep link navigate to it, just like this. So at this point, you can just go await, go to async, details modal page, which is really cool because now what that's going to do is that's going to go to the details tab, and then it's going to push this modal page onto the stack. So you can just start your app up like that, which is really neat. And the neat thing that this lets you do is that it's just a string. That's it. So the cool things you can do with this is, for example, you can save your app location. So as the app location is, as you're navigating around, you can see where you're going to, and then you can be like, hey, I need to save the location that I'm at currently, and then you can use that later on, which I'll demonstrate in the demo as well. You can also navigate to any locations from a web URL, which is really cool for deep linking. So for example, here you'll see I've taken the URL for .NET Conf, and I've added a route destination point here. And the thing to note about Shell is that Shell will automatically strip the scheme and the host here, and then it'll just look at this part of the navigation point. So you can effectively, when that data element comes in from like your Android intent, you can just take that data string and say, hey, Shell, navigate to this thing. Like if the URL page has a logical mapping into Shell, and then it'll just go there. So it's really neat. If you've been using Shell, maybe you haven't seen this, but we recently added modal pages to Shell. So the neat thing here is all you really have to do is on your content page, so on the page that you want to act like a modal page, you basically just say presentation mode modal. And then at that point, anytime that page is navigated to, it's done modally. Just like that. So you just go to async modal page. So that's how Shell kind of works a lot with these attached properties, because that's the idea, is that Shell is the structure, and then you use these attached properties to indicate, to annotate the different actual UI elements, how you want Shell to treat those things once Shell has to present it. So in a future world, someone might even build a completely different abstraction UI concrete implementation against the Shell's declarative structure. So for example, Tizen they took our Xaminals app and they built a Shell version of that projects onto a watch. So, the watch doesn't have this concept of flyouts or tabs or anything like that. But because Shell just is like, since they can just consume the Shell declarative structure, and then they can just map that over to, they can interpret any of those declarative elements however they want to onto a watch UI, which is really neat. So if any other UI paradigms come across dual screen, then we can kind of do the same thing, which is really fun. The other fun thing about navigation, passing parameters. So this is really nice because it makes it easy to pass context into a navigation page. So really all you have to do is you attribute your, so this works on the view or VM. It'd be more clear here to say binding context. But if there's a binding context on the page, it tries to apply the property to that first. If it can't, then it applies it to the view. So you'll see in this case here, I've named the properties the same name in order to be confusing. But one of these properties here, this, I'm pretty sure it's the first one here, maps to what property inside the view model you want it to be. And then the second property here is the incoming query string property. Now this lets you do a couple of cool things as well. One, it gives context to the navigation. So this also kind of this is what lets you also do that deep leaking concept, is that URL coming in now has that ID. So if you kind of keep everything simple, even with strings, and you're able to articulate your destination points that way, then it's really nice too, because every string represents your exact location, which it's a really neat way to kind of maintain state if you sort of want to like pull things up. So yeah, here, navigate, go to async page ID 12, just like that. And then it gets pulled into the ID. So the other nice thing here is shell navigation events. There's a lot of really useful eventing that you can do with the navigation to sort of centralize, because even like the navigation page stuff doesn't have the greatest generalized navigation concept, especially because, you know, the navigation pages each exist at their own sort of level. So if you have a navigation page on one tab and another tab, it's a little tricky to sort of aggregate those into a single area. But shell basically gives you these neat little ideas here where you can tap into anytime shell is navigating. So for example, there's a cool API here, navigating, where anytime shell tries to navigate, so this even works for like the back button. So if the user hits the back button, navigating is hit, and then you can cancel the navigation. You can look at where they're going, et cetera, et cetera. And then, yeah, I mean, you can even look at where they're going, cancel it, and then change where they go, where they're going to go to. It's nice because it just gives you this really simplified central location to do that. And then, obviously, if there's a navigating, we need a navigated, right? So here it's just different things that you might want to do on navigated. So here you'll see kind of a sample later where basically what I'm doing is I'm saving off the navigated URL and saving it to preferences that I can use when the application is restarted. Shell also comes with a bunch of nice, neat little helpers, attached properties for different UI concepts that kind of will easily create these ideas for you. So for example, here we have this search handler. So the search handler is cool because it just adds a nice little search handler here up in your title view. And then it has kind of sets of APIs that you can tap into when the user selects items, when they hit the enter key, when they hit the clear key, and then at that point, you can just act upon those. So you'll see here in my sample, I've typed the letter T, and now it's a list here of items. So, and a lot of times what you'll see people do, so the items here bind to like an item source. And then what people will do is they'll bind it to like an observable collection. And then as they type, you kind of can filter down that collection as you need. And then the user can kind of click on it. So yeah, search handle. This is kind of a familiar one if you've used navigations. This is kind of just showing you some things that exist that you can also use in shell. So the title view is fully functional as well. Here, you just on any content page, you basically just say, hey, this is my title view. Boop, boop, and then it shows up just like that. So, you know, nothing too crazy from if you've used navigation pages, just sort of showing you kind of like the API symmetry there of being able to still do all the things that you want to do in non-shell apps, but sort of in shell apps. So to kind of continue along that, shell also will pull in your toolbar items, for example. So if you have toolbar items on a content page, then those toolbar items will show up here. Up in your top right corner, like you'd expect. So I've kind of put together a demo, which I think it's sort of a it's kind of going over these ideas again, but it's letting you kind of see them construct and build up from kind of the ground up. So here, let me load up my studio. Let me bring over my emulator. So this is also kind of a fun demo because I wanted to show off hot reload as well. So here we have a basic app, right? Homepage. Yeah, so here's the homepage. So let's give this homepage a title. Okay, so we give that a title. Hopefully it refreshes. There it goes. Yay, look at that homepage title. But here we want to kind of build more of our app, right? So there's other sort of APIs here that you can tap into that are super helpful to kind of just quickly do what you want. So let's look at this. All right, I want this to have kind of a nifty little header, right? So shell flyout header. So this just takes any type of content view. There's also a header data template if you want to use a data template here, and there you go. Adds our nice header to our flyout. And as you can see, this flyout behavior is set to scroll. So the other options there are scroll, which just lets it scroll. Fixed, which will just stay at the top, stuck. So then the items here will scroll underneath it. And then collapse on scroll will basically collapse it down to a min height. So it kind of makes it has this really cool like squishing effect. All right. So let's keep kind of going along this journey of customizing. So a lot of these things are the ones you saw from the demo. Just making sure I didn't comment this out. No, I didn't. Okay, cool. Yeah, so the other things here, so let's add our account screens here. So if we add our account screens, we'll see this shows up, account. Now this is a flyout item, boom, with 2 tabs, and I've specified that I want the icon to be an elephant because elephants are awesome. Now, some of the neat stuff you can do here is you can kind of indicate how you want the flyout items to display. Like, let's say you don't really want to display this one. Let's say you want people to link directly into your tabs. So what you can do here is you can tell this to go as multiple items. Then if we save that, you'll see they lay out here. So these are those 2 children. So now if I click on these, it'll go directly to this tab or this tab. And you can kind of take this idea pretty far down into the structure here. So as multiple items here, now this is representing the 2 shell contents. But for this, I want to keep it as single item. But the other nice thing here is we can sort of, we can make our icons a little bit better. So let's add some icons. Let's add a cat. And then let's add a dog. Here, dog.png. Cool. Oh, blue circle, it'll recover, I promise. But yeah, all right. So there we have a dog. So we have a cat dog. Alone in this world was a little cat dog. So if we click on one of these items, now you'll see it just takes us directly to that tab here. But I want to make these tabs a little bit more interesting. So what you can do too is you can kind of change these things around. So you can do different icons. So for example, here I can add a calculator PNG if I want it to be on the tab. So see, nice little tab. Ooh, fun. And then this here on the styling, this was the one I was showing you from the demo here, this details. You'll see this has a style class on it, main page flyout item. So all I've really done on that one is change it to purple and underline, and you see everything else kind of stays the same to match the properties. Neat stuff. Yeah, so now let's kind of go into the pages and make those a little more involved. So some of this is still just kind of showing off the some of the fun stuff you can do with the hot reload. So this is, what is this? This is customer details. I thought I had all these set up. Where is it? Oh, here it is. That is the right one. I just didn't see the comment out. So if I take this title view and I uncomment it, you'll see I can save it. And then at that point, the text will show up, hello from title view. Cool. All right, so then now I kind of wanted to show some other fun APIs here. So if I click on add customer, what that does is that goes to a second page right here, new customer. So if you look at, there's nothing, that's just kind of the registering stuff that I was talking about earlier. So basically what I've done is I've just registered 2 different pages, modal page and new customer details here. So those are pages I can kind of navigate to from anywhere. But the neat thing here that I've done with the new customer details is I've changed the behavior of the back button. So you'll see here when I went there, I changed it to a save button. So you'll see text override equals save. And I've tied the command to a command on the back end so that when I click the save button, what it does is it executes a command instead of what would typically be going back. So here I'll click save, you'll see, oh, error, please fill out this form. Maybe try the back button. All right, let's try the back button. Nope, better just fill out the form. Wah, wah. So you'll see this was that navigating I was telling you about here, shell navigating, where I basically cancel the event, and then I go from there. So let's enter in the data, click save, bum-ba-da, cool stuff. Now, let's kind of keep going along this. You see the customers. So this isn't, this is basically just the search handler I was showing you. I just kind of wanted to show it working. So here, if you type, you can click something, boom, shows up here, rabbit. And that's a pretty, it's kind of nice because the handler handles sort of mapping into all of your all of the data, any of the actions. So you'll see here, all I've done to realize this search view is I've created a search handler here. I've inherited from search handler, and then I'm overriding on item selected. And then at that point, I'm passing this up to the account page. So that's it. So all I had to do to get this search handler is just create my own one, which is used to handle sort of the message negotiating. And then on the account customers, it's just a search handler. And that's it. Simple, simple. All right, so then this is kind of some additional APIs you can customize here. So the neat thing with this is, like, let's say you're on a page here where you don't really want the nav bar. So let's say when they go to settings, you don't want that. So basically you would just say false, if you can spell it, like that. And then the nav bar will magically disappear. There we go. Nav bar magically disappears. Yeah, and you can do the same thing with the tab bar. Boom. And we can bring it back. Cool stuff. So I kind of hit all my stuff inside the pages. Yeah, so those are kind of the those are kind of the basics of sort of styling everything. All right, but I wanted to kind of demonstrate some fun extension points and things that you could do. So let's demo this. We will see our hot reload. Dun, da, da. So you'll see here, this is just using kind of some of the styling features I was talking about. Menu item, menu template, custom flyout template here, which is really neat because now all I've really said is go big, go cornflower blue, and then you're good to go. And then see here, I can just click it, modal page loads. Boom. Neat stuff. So the other thing I wanted to show was deep linking, just kind of how quickly I sort of put together this deep linking concept. So all I really did here was the stuff you do for Android. So on Android, I set up the intent filter. So I tell the intent, this is the activity to handle this intent. I set the launch mode to single top because I just wanted to reuse the activity when it's there. And then I just have it handle the HTTPS scheme and then my data host of .NET-conf.net. Now then all I do is handle the new intent property. Now let's go sort of into this process initial navigation here. And when I go over here, I click on the URL. Oh, it asked me this again. I thought I did it once and then it was happy. Hold on. Let me click through. Go back. What did I click wrong on that one? All right, let me get the permissions. Oh wait, ask every time. I'm clicking, I need to slow down. Open in this app. There we go. All right, there we go. So you can see this is just passing the URL. .NET Conf page ID 12. Now if we continue this along, boom, look at that. So what that's done is that's navigated now into my shell page here. So that's this tab bar. And on that shell page, is it? No, not the shell page. I'm sorry. The deep link page here is where it goes into. So the deep link page has a view model. So this is that ID I was talking about. Dun, da, da. Look at that. Deep link page. So this just throws the event, ID maps. It binds it to a 12. I'm sort of just showing this so you don't think I randomly put a 12 on a page. You're like, yeah, whatever. It's not actually linking in. But no, there's the 12 that I promised you. Yeah, and then you can kind of click back to your app here. All right, so I wanted to show one more thing before we kind of get to the questions part. So you'll see on my shell page here, what I'm doing is I'm saving these URLs here to the last known location. So what happens with this is if I go to a modal page here, you'll see now it triggers this. I take the location, which is homepage modal page, and I save it to preferences using Essentials because Essentials is awesome. And then at that point, let's stop the app and then let's start it. I have to use the debugger to start it, which I realized because the hot reload doesn't project the new DLL in completeness. So if I was to start up the app again here, it would just be the initial page. So yeah, I have to start it back up. But what that does here, I'll kind of walk through while it's starting up, is on the on create, what I'm doing is after I load the application, I'm passing process initial navigation into here. And then the initial navigation here is now looking for last known URL. And if it finds last known URL, then it navigates to it. So you can see here, look, it returned to the modal page. Now, if I click back, well, we're back to our home page, and here we have all of our happy little items. So there was one other small thing I saw that I had missed. I just wanted to show you. Kind of saw this in the styling, but what you can here, kind of the cool style properties. I just wanted to see, kind of see the hot reload magic here of it turning colors. Woo, wasn't that fun? Cool. All right, well, let's switch back to the slides. So that's a blue screen of nothingness, which is not that exciting. And I went back to the whole slide. All right, let me just go here from current slide. So the whole idea with Shell especially is that we want it to be a stand-in replacement for the majority of your pages. So you can, as you saw, you can kind of express any of these ideas here. So we want all your file new apps to be Shell apps. If you do that and you fail, please let us know so that we can make sure to account for those scenarios. What's coming here for Shell? These are our upcoming work that we're doing. So right now I've been working with Dan Siegel a bunch on Prism integration. We want to pull in all the title view stuff to get all that centering. We want to be able to template everything. So that's that whole tab bar, everything, native dual screen support. We're looking a lot at performance improvements because I know a lot of people have been asking about that. And if you look on our Xamarin Forms board, you'll see we have a Shell project, and you can look at that to kind of see where we're going and what, kind of what's important. So if you look at the project board and you think that project board makes no sense, please let us know so we can kind of change prioritizations on different items. So cool. And with that, we can go to the questions portion of the talk. I was going to bring up Twitter here real quick. I don't know if there's some questions that the folks you there have.
Yeah, Shane, thank you so much. We have a lot of questions, so we're gonna do rapid fire Q&As. And the first question is from George. He would like to know, does Shell support nested tab with nested one having like an hero image view on top of its tab bar buttons?
Not currently, but that is also another scenario we are very actively working on. So the big thing there is wanting to be able to push. So like right now, if you have a tab bar, you can't like push that onto the stack, which is it's definitely a frustrating limitation. But that's a very high priority thing, which will let you do those types of scenarios.
Got it. Excellent. The next question I have from Diogo, and he would like to know, can we navigate with Shell in the same way we can with Prism, passing objects as arguments to the navigate method?
Not currently. We have a PR out there for it. There's a little bit of discussion around the best way that we want to articulate that. One of the kind of nice things about doing your string stuff is, because a lot of the stuff with Shell, we want sort of deep linking. Once you kind of pass a class in, that gives sort of a contextual point of navigation, which might be fine, but it's not something, say, that you could as easily do for sort of restoring or things like that. There were some, I think, reasons with hot reload we hadn't done it yet, but there is a PR for it, and it is something we're looking into. So the way you can kind of do that now is you can, you can pass the ID and sort of use different sort of storage mechanisms to kind of pass it across. But yeah, that is one that we're definitely kind of discussing the best way to do. So, because a lot of it is wanting to be able to have the state be immutable, and passing modal objects passing concrete objects kind of ruins a little bit of that. So yeah.
I see. Okay, Ryan from Twitter is asking, does shell support async navigation?
Yeah, go to async is all async. So the calls when you're doing go to async it's all awaited.
Perfect.
Yes. Yeah. So
also, Ryan has another question. Does shell have an async on navigated or on navigating methods?
Not currently. So that's going to be coming in some of the work that I'm doing with the MVVM things. So the MVVM thing is going to be converting a lot of those events and such to be async. So, and there's a PR out there that has a lot of that work in it. So that's one that's coming as well.
Perfect. All right, next question from Michael. He would like to know, will you add possibility to add flyout sub-items? Can we make items dynamic using binding?
Yeah, I think I mostly follow that. So the with the templates, you can kind of bind into the templates. So the nice thing about the templates is that they let you is you can sort of set up this template, and then you can set up the binding here. And so this binding here kind of binds into the view model at the shell level, or you can kind of set the binding context here onto each one of those things and bind to it. And then if you're sort of asking about the visibility stuff, that one we're working on. We've improved a lot of the behavior for removing and adding items. We had added an is visible property, but the is visible property sort of violates some of the UI paradigms. So we're reworking that a little bit. The ideal thing I think is going to be to tie it to is enabled, because that sort of matches the declarative structure a bit. So that one we're kind of we're shopping. So at this point you can remove and add the items. So you can do that via, say, like a converter or something of that nature. It's not quite as smooth, but yeah. So that's another one we're looking to make easier.
Okay, great. And we have the last question from Johan, and that is, how does shell compare to forms in runtime performance?
That's a hard one to answer. I don't have numbers on that. Sorry. I know Peppers and Chris King are doing a lot of performance stuff, and they're doing a lot of the performance analysis they're doing are with shell. So yeah, I mean that's a little. I don't have any specific numbers on that. The RAWs thing I could say is if your app is just purely a content page, that's probably going to start a little bit faster. But with shell, you know, once you get your app to a point where it has stuff, then it's gonna. The goal is to get shell faster. So if you switch to shell and it's slower, let us know. There's some performance stuff we're working with navigating that need to be fixed, but the goal is to make it as fast as possible. Plus, it's not as quite of a complex, deep native hierarchy. So it's fundamentally a simpler app, like the layout structure, once you sort of get to the native bare bones of it.
Excellent. All right, we're at time. Thank you very much, Shane, again for the great talk. And we're moving next to James.